Think about this. A letting agent is like your own personal assistant. They do absolutely everything for you so that you can be completely hands-off for a very, very tiny amount of money. In fact, a letting agent makes you more money, and a lot of landlords don't realise this. Just one example is that a good letting agent keeps the rent at a fair market value. And I say the word fair on purpose because if you're going to keep the rent at the right amount, you've got to make sure that you're also keeping the tenant long term. You're keeping the tenant secure and comfortable. They can afford the rent whilst still making the landlord as much profit as possible. You're not risking the tenant going into arrears or needing to leave the property because that doesn't help anybody. But a lot of landlords, and you've got to be honest with yourself here, do not keep the rent at the right rent value. A lot of landlords feel that they should keep the rent low so that the tenant can afford it. But that's not the right strategy because a landlord has to make profit. It is vital to being a landlord for you to make profit. But also, a letting agent keeps you fully compliant and avoids penalties. And penalties are being given out left, right and centre. If you haven't had one yet, then watch out because the councils are coming after you. A lot of landlords that look after their own tenants, their own tenancies, think that it won't happen to them. A letting agent is almost like your insurance policy or your protection or stress relief when things do go wrong. And things will go wrong eventually. You're in property. It happens. Imagine having to look after an eviction all by yourself from start to finish, or rent arrears when the tenant's asking for breathing space and trying to arrange repayment plans and things like that. Imagine doing all of that yourself but having to stay compliant. Imagine the housing health and safety rating system and having to deal with all of that yourself. That's a nightmare for a DIY landlord. Dealing with council rent repayment orders or banning orders. It can happen and probably will happen to a lot of landlords. It's not going to be a case of it won't happen to me. So rather than dealing with all of that yourself, dealing with all the tenants' inquiries, all the contractors, the property, the compliance, the regulation, the legal requirements and everything like that, just use a letting agent. It's a fraction of the cost. It makes you more money and you didn't become a landlord so that you could also become a letting agent or a tenancy manager.